Hey, it's Amy Newmark, and I'm taking this week off so I can work on our fall books. I've picked out one of my favorite weeks from last summer to rerun for you, and I'll be back next Monday with new episodes.
Changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Tip Tuesday, and we talk about an easy-to-implement, life-changing tip from one of our stories. Today, I want to talk about anger management, how to handle it yourself, and also how to help your kids or other people handle anger. So let's start with kids. My kids are great friends, and they always have been. But when they were little, they fought a lot, which is pretty normal for kids who are 2 years apart. I had a rule. Whenever they were arguing about something, they each had to stand on a piece of furniture. There they were, my son on one chair, my daughter on another, and they would inevitably burst out laughing at how silly they looked, standing on furniture and arguing with each other, and the argument would die a natural death. I'm no longer mediating disputes between my children, so my anger management strategies are now focused on my own life. I don't know its origin, but there is a great quote that says, "For every minute you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness." Getting angry always makes me feel bad, so I try not to do it. The thing that works for me best is not to take things personally. When someone is yelling at you or is angry at you, it's probably not really about you. It's about something going on in that person's life. I remember last year I was having trouble with an outside vendor who was going through some major personal problems, and he started lashing out at me, even though we had had a wonderful business relationship for 6 years and had been real friends. One Sunday, he called me at home, and he started screaming at me. My husband couldn't believe that I just sat there calmly listening to my cell phone as this guy screamed. I let him scream for 20 minutes, holding the phone away from my ear. And my husband said, "Why don't you hang up?" I told him I didn't mind listening. I thought I might learn something, and it just didn't bother me. I knew that this poor guy was in distress, and I just happened to be someone who was very important to him in a world that was falling apart. A few hours later, he called me again, quiet, asking me for help, because his wife was so concerned about him that she had had him checked into a hospital. I just don't understand why anyone would take it personally when someone is obviously reacting to his or her own issues. I can think of many times in my life when someone has yelled at me, and I've just stood there and looked at the person and analyzed the situation, because it's not about me. It's about that person's own circumstances. So when I encounter someone rude out in the world, or someone who seems truly angry, maybe a stranger or someone working in a store, I remind myself that he or she is not being rude to me specifically. Maybe she just hates her job, or maybe he is worried about something in his family, or maybe the customer right before me was difficult. But I remind myself that I'm not that important to that person. That person certainly doesn't care enough about me to manufacture that rudeness just for me. It's not about me. I tell myself to get over it. Now, I'm not a saint. Besides telling myself that the anger or rudeness is not truly directed at me specifically, I do tell myself one other thing. I point out to myself that I don't have to be that person. Here's what I tell myself when I am confronted by a real jerk. He is stuck with being himself. I don't have to be that unhappy, unpleasant person who was just rude to me. I get to be me. I don't have to be him. There's a quote attributed to Elizabeth Kenny that sums it up. "He who angers you conquers you." If you react to that rude person and you become unhappy too, you have let him win, and you'll then transfer that unhappiness to someone else. Now, back to anger management in my family. The kids are grown, so as an empty nester, I get to practice my anger management theories on my husband. Since it drives me crazy when he complains about the other drivers on the road, we have a new rule in the car. Every time he wants to complain about another driver, he has to say something nice about that person instead. So my husband has resorted to blowing kisses at the offending drivers. It's really funny. I'll watch him exclaim, "I love you, minivan driver from New Jersey," and then blow kisses in the minivan's direction. But it redirects his emotions, and we laugh instead of getting steamed up. And here's another great quote from Alan Alda. He said, "When people are laughing, they're generally not killing each other." Tomorrow is Wow Wednesday, and because it's wedding and anniversary season, I thought it would be fun to share some wedding disaster stories with you. I'm Amy Newmark, and I want to thank you for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. We have a huge number of listeners now, 4,000 a day, but my producers say that we need reviews on iTunes. So please, if you listen to this podcast via iTunes, write a review and make my producers happy. And if you have comments about our podcast that you'd like to share with me, please shoot me an email at amy@chickensoupforthesoul.com.